Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this presentation that I will briefly share our paper entitled The Inovar Auto Program in Brazil, its objectives and the automakers edition, written by me, Tiago Vargas, and Professor Geraldo Pinto. I'm very glad to participate at your piece again. It's my second time. The first was at São Paulo in 2018, when this PhD research was just beginning. Now we bring some of its results. Inovar Auto was broadly discussed at GRPs in the last few years. Even so, introducing it was a Brazilian tax incentives to automakers. It was promulgated in 2012, but its benefit for automakers occurred during 2013 to 2017. The incentive aimed at three groups of companies: those that manufacture in the national territory the products covered by the program, in short, cars, light commercial vehicles, trucks, buses. A second group of companies that had projects for new industrial plants, and companies that marketed products in the country. To participate, companies must meet two mandatory requirements: to meet fuel consumption efficiency targets and the maintenance of a typical situation concerning federal taxes. But there were also optional requirements. Companies could choose which ones they would meet. In the case of passenger car manufacturers, they should choose 3 out of 4, which were reaching a minimum level of nationalization percentage of parts and operations. The same concerning the percentage of revenue and expenditure on research and development, and similarly to engineering, expense in engineering, basic industrial technology, and supplier development. And the fourth requirement, companies could participate in the Brazilian vehicle labeling program, vehicular tagging program. Well, however, reading the program legislation, it's possible to question whether the intended purpose were different or not for each company involved. It's fair to ask whether there were different expectations on the part of participating companies, whether they belong to the same sector, such as automakers, or different sectors, importers, assemblers, auto parts, and so on. So in order to investigate, we carried out semi-structured interviews with specialists, working organizations linked to the automotive chain. Of course, these actors also participate in Inovar Auto, in the execution or elaboration. So this paper aims to evaluate the development of the program in terms of modification of the sector, throughout the analysis of the projects participating in the program. And also, additionally, they study and analyze 3 facts that occurred during the program and interfered in its progress. So starting by the contest, when the program was launched, when we analyzed the number of car licenses in the country, it can be seen that although national car license increased by almost 60% from 2006 to 2012, the percentage of imported vehicle license in relation to the total went from 6.4 in 2006 to 21.7 in 2012. 2012 was when Inovar Auto was promulgated. So there are 2 conditions that express the context of Inovar Auto: growing market and increasing imports. A director member of Metal Workers Union reported, quote, "There was a significant impact that year, 2010. I think the domestic imported market has grown to over 1 million cars, starkly extrapolating the share of imported ones in Brazil. And the big international automakers that do not have plants in Brazil set up operations to explore the Brazilian market via import, not via local production. Look, in a little while, we will no longer have an assembler here like that. The Chinese come here, how will it be? And the government had to do something." And a member of Brazilian Union Statistics Organization stated, When Cherry announces that we will arrive here, it promises to arrive with a car at that time at the price, if I'm not mistaken, of around 12 and 13,000 of Brazilian reais, while the entry car in Brazil was 22,000 Brazilian reais. So the Chinese threatened to arrive here in Brazil with a car at half of the price. Well, that puts automaker in panic in general. In summary, Inovar Auto was designed under a spectrum that surrounded the Brazilian industry, the spectrum of Chinese products. After Inovar Auto had been promulgated, 2012, the automakers division was unanimous. All 20 manufacturers that already have facilities in the country qualified, but the execution had its complexities. At the graphic, we illustrate the summary of the dynamics of entry and exit of companies to the program. So we excluded the manufacturers that already have factories in the country, joined the program, but not qualify with projects for new plants or new lines. They are not in the chart. The graphic shows only the changes in the country's manufacturing structures during the period of Inovar Auto. Three types of participations are described in the analysis. Qualifications for companies that did not manufacture locally and they sign up for projects for new factories, new entrants, in orange, the orange bars. Companies that already have factories and qualified as manufacturers, therefore they would not expand their plants but would have to fulfill 3 or 4 program criteria, in gray. And in blue, companies that already had local factory but qualified with a project for new factories or production lines, called in the graphic as projects of new factory expansions, in blue. We'll highlight a few findings, but just to mention, these first 2 groups, CAOA and MMC, have national capital in their composition. CAOA had, prior to Inovar Auto, a plant where it produced some lines from Hyundai. And MMC holds the Mitsubishi brand concession in the country. So, starting with these cases of the companies who started with a new factory since the beginning of the program, Nissan, BMW, DAF, and Chery, there are evidences that the Inovar Auto facilitated or stimulated a previous local installation project. There are also cases of companies that qualified during the program and also continued to the end, like Mercedes, Audi, and Jaguar Land Rover. Okay. The same was not observed in the other cases that were first stated throughout the program. The 5 cases that qualified at some point but were discontinued were all from Chinese companies. Among these, so those are the cases: JAC, Photon Motors, SBTC, Metroshack. Among this one, the one that gained the most significant projections was the JAC Motors. In 2011, the company had reached the second largest car importer position in the country, having opened 50 dealerships in 28 Brazilian cities. In 2014, around here, problems between the headquarters and the Brazilian partner were triggered. The national market had a drop in consumption, which resulted in the project being abandoned. It is estimated that the sum of this discontinued project resulted in a reduction of almost 2 billion in investment, representing 21% of the total. It is noted that the Chinese company that qualified for the program mostly had a negative result. Even if they have negotiated concessions for facility, public resource for investments, the market retraction postponed or canceled their project. The most famous case was the JAC, as it gained an expressive market share in the years preceding the program. The other ones were frustrated, with a Chery's exception. Oh, here we go. So, such Chinese companies, they were previous importers, and either because they already had a previous plan or because they were compelled by the benefit of Inovar Auto to promote local production, they chose to launch an investment project. However, the program included importers. 15 companies opted for this modality. Here is a table with them. Okay. The table lists the companies that sign up in the first column, the name, the company name, the period in which the company was qualified, and the brands marketed by each one. Of the 15 participating importers, only one has signed up after 2013. The importer of Kia, Brazil Training Limitada in Brazil. Okay. What is interesting is that this company was the largest vehicle importer in the country prior to Inovar Auto. One other finding shown on the table refers to the importers that did not continue to be eligible for the program until 2017. There are many. 2014, here we see some of them. Once again, the Chinese appears as the negative case of the program. Of the 15 qualified importers, they represented 7 of them, of which 4 did not reach the end of the program. Electronic, CN, Audi changed the modality, district car. Jaguar also changed. So, it's true that market conditions changed throughout Inovar Auto, which may have been an essential variable in the adhesion of these companies. However, the program itself has changed over time. We highlight 3 facts that occurred during the program and that interfered in its development, and I will show in the next slides. So after the beginning of the use of the credits, and with the program already in place, Brazilian government regulated the calculation system to measure local content, expenditures made in the country. The calculation of credits was computed at the time by national acquisition without quantifying the national content. As an interview reported, quote, a complaint comes to the union. The complaint is about the oil filter. We receive information, and then we go to the factory to check with the production. And the complaint said the following: they are packing imported products. They will pack the auto part in Brazil and give Brazilian invoices with the import model because the tax control was this: invoice versus import voice. So the fragility of the measurement was solved in September 2014, which imposed an assessment of traceability of acquisitions, and the calculation of credits should be carried out only for national content. For this new measurement, it was created the obligation of the automaker suppliers to provide information regarding their inputs, with penalties for non-compliance. In an interview, a member of the Brazilian Auto Parts Industry Association describes the impact of this change for the sector, for the auto parts sector. Look, the big problem, moreover a challenge, was when it demanded the implementation of the local content measurement system process. Why do I say that? A good part of companies were not prepared. They demanded expensive software, etc., which was not necessarily passed on the price. And in that, some companies have spent a lot. On the other hand, this was the main challenge in the implementation and development of the system of measurement, and then also the risk of having a problem there in the declaration with the federal revenue, and etc. ahead. So a lot of companies were afraid. Anyway, with national content and imposition of traceability, the program favored local production. However, favoring local production is contrary to international trade agreements. Brazil is a member of the World Trade Organization. Brazil had already been questioned at the WTO in government tax incentive programs for automotive sector, before Inovar Auto, of course. Would the federal government, under President Dilma Rousseff, have taken into account the possibility of a new questioning At this time of Inovar Auto, respondents were unanimous in stating that the program was designed to take into account that it could be questioned at WTO at a specific point. However, its short duration would mean that it would be closed before it was even tried at the WTO. So here we have some of the interviews reported, quote, they knew the risk of a future WTO contention, but they knew that it's not something that unfolds fast. Another one, quote, we knew that this was going to happen. There was nothing new. Now, we knew that someone was going to report it, that the Japanese were left with us, and we knew that it would take 5 years for the deal to be tried. To create some big problems until we open a panel, the government would respond. In 5 years, Inovar Auto had a red run. It was expected to enter programs. It would already be the next step, as the WTO allows you to protect technological development. The route was make the turn, then you apologize to the WTO, and the 30%. You will say that there was really a mistake, we shouldn't have protected it. I could amend local content, then you went in the normal route, which was to encourage technological development. The conviction at the WTO was published in 2017. Brazil appealed the decision, and after a few more steps in 2019, the decision was accepted by the country, at which time the program had a red mandate. Assuming the strategy was successful, its developers and the federal government could celebrate. However, the federal government did not survive the political and economic crisis installed in the country as for around 2015. So in its economic aspect, in 2015, the program was threatened. In the period, the forecasts were for investments and production reduction. Counter-cycle measures were taken by government, which in summary were credited for working capital investments. Although the measures were relevant, Brazilian automotive industry depends on the domestic market, and the international scenario was unfavorable. To illustrate the relevance of the economic crisis in the automotive industry during the period of Inovar Auto, we can observe the number of car licenses annually. The significant reduction in the number of annual licenses in 2015-2016 reveals the domestic consumer market shrinking due to the economic crisis. In 2016, the lowest level of the period, 1.68 million national cars were licensed. This number represents 54% of the number of car licenses at the beginning of the program in 2012. The economic and political crisis sealed the fate of the program. All respondents mentioned the crisis as the limiter of the results. Although the three factors discussed, tracking national content, WTO condemnation, economic and political crisis, marked the development of Inovar Auto, this third prevailed. In the difficulty of Inovar Auto as a policy to encourage the development of the automotive sector. Well, so when observing Inovar Auto through the goals of the federal government, the program had an expressive success. Even the questioning of the WTO, which could be a limiting factor of its result, proved to be a practically non-existing problem, as there was not enough time to the country to be penalized. And the addition of companies to Inovar Auto, which on the one hand had a relevant dropout rate, on the other resulting in the implicit objective most desired by the actors, the extension of the arrival of Chinese companies. The analysis of the individual cases of the companies that participated in Inovar Auto showed a predisposition by the industries to settle in the country before the program, due to a growing market. Similarly, When the country faced a political-economic crisis, the program was weakened. The analysis made it clear that the success and failure of the secular policy was much more related to external factors than to its formulation and execution. Based on the analysis of a public incentive such as Inovar Auto, aimed at a specific industrial sector, highlights the strategies carried out by the state to attract new investments and fixing technological development to the national territory. The difficulties of such a process are even more evident in the case of a country like Brazil, whose automotive chain is mostly composed of foreign companies. The case of Inovar Auto is also useful in demonstrating that other countries with late industrialization, such as China, in seeking to expand their operations to a rising automotive market like Brazil, end up facing difficulties that go beyond simple price competition. Finally, the very formulation of a state incentive policy seems related to interest of the transnational companies already installed here. And also, it points to a tendency to maintain the concentration of market power. Thank you very much. Be safe.